A millipede, a janitor, and a cowboy walk into a museum. No, this isn't the start of a joke. That is actually the reality of Atari Mania. Atari is a name that most of us recognize, or at least should, to some degree if we're playing video games, even if we weren't around for their heyday. Recently, Atari has been able to introduce a new audience to some of their classic titles with their Recharged series. Atari Mania is not like those games. This is something completely different. A loving tribute to the company's classic sprawling lineage, but with a microgame twist. It's a strange cocktail, but it kinda works. Think Namco Museum meets Warioware. In Atari Mania, you are the caretaker of the Atari Museum. Your job is to sweep and to make sure the classic characters show up to work at their respective games. Easy money, though you're definitely counting down the days until your retirement, and you make that very clear. On this particular day, however, it is not a normal day on the job. While you're going about your standard duties, a series of dead pixels appear that threaten the safety of you and the many Atari All-Stars featured throughout this gallery. This might just be above your pay grade, but there's nobody else around to do it, so it's up to you to save the day. The game is broken up into two modes of gameplay. You have your exploration and puzzle-solving mode, where you are playing as the caretaker and free to roam about the museum. You have your utilities, such as your broom for sweeping or a magnet for attracting metallic items. The puzzles are pretty simple, but they're a nice diversion that break up the second part of the game, which is the microgame barrage. These microgames borrow from Atari classics, but not necessarily in the way that you're expecting. Each microgame world pulls from 3 Atari titles combined in random and unconventional ways. You might find yourself shooting down the millipede with arrows before time expires, or playing a game of Pong with an Olympian. Each dark pixel lord offers a set number of these challenges before you reach them, and you can sustain several losses before failing entirely. Towards the end of your trial, losing a minigame can send you backwards a space, and if you run out of lives, it's back to the start of that particular arena. Should you manage to defeat a boss, you will unlock an arcade cabinet where you can then play through more of those minigames. In addition to this darkness and chaos, the museum does also happen to be chock full of classic Atari memorabilia, such as posters and manuals which can be collected and viewed at your leisure. Posters can be found throughout your basic explorations, however manuals must be earned through cheese and pain. Give a mouse a morsel of Munster and you may win yourself a beautifully rendered instruction booklet. Personally, I really loved the authenticity of these. They transported me right back to childhood, where I would be reading the game manual in the back seat of the car on the way home from my latest acquisition. In total, there are over 150 minigames, and Atari fans will easily recognize many of the worlds and characters, while newcomers may not have the same connection or nostalgia goggles. This ultimately makes Atari Mania a bit of a tougher sell for those that aren't nostalgic for the late 70s, early 80s of gaming, but there is still something to appreciate for all, as long as you enjoy microgames. As far as the quality of the actual games, they're a little bit hit or miss, much like my Pong skills, if I'm being honest. This game is fairly challenging, but not insurmountable. That's a different game. See our review here at I Dream of Indie, shameless plug. But still, it is ultimately a game that puts you in stressful situations and relies on quick reflexes and reaction time. To the game's credit, you are not thrown in immediately to these microgames. You are given an explanation in the form of a sentence or two with basic instructions. Granted, these instructions don't always make perfect sense and might actually take playing through the minigame a few times to grasp. They are there, and that's saying something. Some of the microgame gauntlets also have themes to them, like randomization, or my least favorite, the dreaded reverse controls. My brain instantly turns off when I encounter reverse controls. I am no longer in control of my own body. I am completely incompetent. I don't know why I'm like this, but if you ever want to ruin my life, just cast confusion on me. Visuals in Atari Mania are pixel proficient. They're not perfect, but they are charming. The museum itself is a little bit dull. It's definitely very gray and lackluster in color, but as I mentioned, the collectibles, character encounters, and microgames will pull at your heartstrings, especially if you are an Atari fan. It's cute and simple, but definitely nothing mind-blowing, nor does it need to be. The soundtrack, on the other hand, really great, with some boppin' retro blips and bleeps. I love how the sound of the music ramps up as the minigames become increasingly challenging, which, for better or worse, does up your stress levels, which is exactly what they're trying to do, I think. There are no voices in the game, but you do get the text scrolling sounds and other cute little noises and sound effects to fill in any voids. If I'm being honest, I don't think Atari Mania will be a breakout hit, but it is cute, it's nostalgia-filled, it's a walk down memory lane for those who love Atari, and while not every microgame was a winner and not every puzzle required a whole lot of brain power, the game does have a good heart and was a fun playthrough. Plus, you can always go back in and try to collect all of those awesome posters and instruction booklets.